So I decided to do my project on the history of Black churches, but instead of focusing on just the church, I decided to focus on more of the members. So in order to understand why church was so important to a lot of African Americans, we need to understand some history about it. So a lot of West African kingdoms were conquered by the Portuguese about 100 years before they came to Jamestown. And this is when Catholicism was really big, so it can be inferred that when they were conquered by the Portuguese spread Catholicism throughout there. So when the slaves came to Jamestown about 100 years later, they all had Catholic names, all were baptized and stuff like that. So some slave owners would let their slaves come to church with them, but they would have to sit in the back. And sometimes they would receive a special sermon, which was really just a white preacher telling them you need to behave, you need to do your life duties. And the Methodists saw this and they were like, why should they have to just listen to you? Why can't they preach themselves? So in the 1770s and 80s, the Methodists licensed a whole bunch of African American men so they could preach to their own people. They focused on a lot of stories that had something to do with breaking free from being bound to something with the power of God. Something remarkable happened after everyone got licensed, and this was they were able to tell their own stories and really preach what they believed in instead of what they were told to believe. And this caused a lot of anger throughout the white community at that time because they didn't want that. They wanted them just to focus on what they were telling them. But despite this, there was a man named Andrew Bryan who fought for his right to preach, and he became the owner of the first Black Baptist church. So Andrew was born in 1737 on a rice plantation in Goose Creek, South Carolina. He was first introduced to religion at a very young age from the SPG, which was an organization that was created by the colonists to support Native and Black religious needs. And he was converted to Christianity by George Liele. So for the first African Baptist church, after years of listening to George preach, George decided to leave Savannah, which was a town right next to Goose Creek, and go to Jamaica. So Andrew decided to take over his role in preaching at all the churches he would. So he would go to every church he could and would preach what he believed in, and this caused a lot of people to really like him. So he would have huge crowds come, and this was really concerning to a lot of slave owners because they thought they were causing a rebellion. So this resulted in Andrew and his brother being beaten and thrown into jail. But when many white plantation owners came, including Jonathan Bryan, Andrew's own owner, and protested his arrest, this made the courts revisit it and free both of them. So after their release, Andrew continued to preach anytime he could, and he was supported by several prominent white men. And in 1770, Andrew and his wife Hannah were baptized along with 45 other slaves who became his conjugates. And when Jonathan Bryan passed away, which was his owner, he left him 95 pounds of sterling so that Andrew could buy his own freedom in his very own church. Andrew died at age 92 after being a preacher for 24 years. The next person I wanted to talk about, her name was Jerana Lee. She was born on February 11th, 1783, and although she was a free woman, she was born to a very poor Black family. And she says that she was spoken to God, and God told her that she needed to be a preacher, but she was banned from preaching because she was a woman. So after they told her you cannot be preaching, she would preach outside of church, anywhere she could. But one day when she was in church, a guest speaker was having problems giving out his speech. So she jumped in and finished it for him, and Bishop Allen, he endorsed her because of this, because he saw she had boldness and she had passion. So he kind of broke the church's rule and let her preach. And this lasted for 3 decades, but sadly she passed in 1849. But she's still an icon to many men and women of the church. So the church had a very important role in emancipation. So during the years leading up to the Civil War, they had a lot of voices in abolitionism, and they really just wanted to get rid of slavery because they saw that wasn't what God wanted. So they worked side by side with the Underground Railroad and with Harriet Tubman, and they gave her the nickname Moses out of the Bible. And after years of fighting for freedom, the Emancipation Proclamation was finally signed. But this didn't prevent any poverty, chaos, the taking apart of families. So the church in the North decided to fix these problems, and they would teach the kids during the days, like math, reading, all that stuff. And then at night, when the adults came back from work, they would teach them how to navigate this new lifestyle.